The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
You're listening to
Wrestling to the Max.
Alert, clear all channels.
This is an exclusive.
How you like that?
And your hosts, Gary Vaughn, Sean Garmer, and Paul Leeser.
Hello and welcome to this Wrestling to the Max Extra, where we will be going round by round doing an overview of the WWE United Kingdom Tournament. And of course, I am your host, Sean Garmer, and with me here, the whole crew. We're all here to talk about this wonderful tournament that happened on Saturday and Sunday afternoon at night if you're living in the UK. Gary Vaughn, what's up, sir?
Hey, I'm here.
And Mr. Paul Leeser.
Heyo.
Well, guys, general thoughts, I guess, before we get into this going by the rounds here. Let's be honest, if you, for some reason, have not watched this tournament, and this tournament, for us, as far as thinking about in a timely nature, thinking about the amount of people that have probably watched this already, this show is now bordering on 3 days old when it started, 4 days old even, so going through every single match on both shows, I think would be not only tedious, but it's very hard to remember every single moment from each one of those matches when you're watching so many matches at once. Like I marathoned it today. It all becomes a blur. I can't talk today. So yeah. So general thoughts of the tournament before we get into minute things.
Personally, I thought they did a great job setting it up. I watched I call it the setup show, just because I was kind of curious about the background, what their thoughts were, how they were going about the whole tournament, and maybe even the future of the UK, championship and what they're planning on doing with that whole thing. And it was good. I like the setup show. They gave you a little bit of info about the wrestlers, but they gave you a lot of info also about, the history in the UK and how important it is to the fans in the UK and all that great stuff. So I appreciated that. And then actually getting into the tournament, I did like it because I got to see so many faces that I've never seen before. Getting a chance to see some of these guys that kind of remind me of some of the superstars that are already on the main roster in WWE. Because I kind of felt like I saw a guy that's similar, not completely, but similar to Kevin Owens. I think I kind of saw a guy that has, a little bit of that whole, I guess you would say, attitude, kind of like a Big Show, things like that. I like that kind of similarities you can see in these young talents, and their backstories are really cool. So you got some great wrestling, I think. I think that, I have a little bit of something I'm going to say towards the end of this that kind of makes me wonder where they're going and why they did it this way. But in the end, I really did enjoy myself watching this. I don't know about you, Paul.
I enjoyed this, I think, even more than I enjoyed the Cruiserweight Classic. The intangibles, I think, around the entire tournament was one of my favorite parts. Like, the Empress Ballroom was absolutely stunning. Like, I really love it if that's where they run all their shows, because that place, the building has character. You have all these, like, old-school columns and a lot of, like, marbling around the area and the chandeliers and everything. It's absolutely gorgeous. I thought Cole and Nigel actually worked pretty well together. And really told the story of all the wrestlers very well, as well as the matches. And I thought this was great. I was familiar with a lot more of these guys, so I didn't watch any of the pre-show stuff. But I enjoyed this greatly. Like I said, we'll talk about it as we go round by round here. But the storytelling in this was so much better than the Cruiserweight Classic, and because of that, I think you really get a good feeling for all these guys, as well as the creation of a few stars that you're legitimately interested in if you watch the tournament.
No, I definitely agree, and I love the comment you just made about this feeling very old school. In fact, for a few minutes there at the beginning of this tournament, I kind of felt like, man, am I watching 70s or 80s wrestling? Because the ambience, just the classic feel, and that's not a knock at all. That's actually a kind of a cool thing. I love that nostalgic feel on a brand new product. So that was a positive, and it also, getting this tournament together had a lot of different wrestlers from different parts of the UK. Also had guys working for many promotions in the UK. They mentioned Progress Wrestling. They mentioned ICW, I think. And they actually had their promoters there. So that was something cool. I never thought in a million years that they would ever do that. But they did. And so props to WB for that. That was really cool.
Yeah, they even gave little shout-outs to them at different parts of the show, especially the ICW, and I was surprised OTT got one because of them being affiliated with another, being affiliated with FloSlam. But this like I said, I marathoned it today watching the preview thing like Gary did because I don't really know a lot of these guys. I think I knew Pete Dunne, and that was about it as far as people that are in this that I knew anything about, and I walked away surprised of how many of these guys I cared about when it was over, and how many I felt like, man, I really want to watch a match with them again. And I can't say that a lot of those prelim guys, you kind of still had the same thing with the Cruiserweight Classic too, where I don't know that I really cared too much about like the guys that got eliminated. Other than, like, I really thought, man, I wonder what would have become of Danny Burch if they wouldn't have treated him like a jobber in NXT. Because, dude, I wanted that guy to win. I didn't want Jordan Devlin to win. I wanted that guy. I wanted him to win. He was so awesome in that match. I know it wasn't, like, the greatest match in the world, but I thought he put on a great... it was just a cool thing to see. That title is beautiful, I think it might be one of the most beautiful titles WWE has. And you're looking at outside of the WWE title, I think maybe the IC if you like your classic stuff. But dang, that Universal title sitting over there, like, why couldn't you make me look like that?
Yeah, true. It looks more like a belt you see in TNA than it would be, anything else.
Ouch.
But yeah.
I think it's about branding, right? The WWE, the big belts there, they obviously have the big logo for the network now, and this is very much a championship dedicated to a specific area, a specific region, and I think it expresses it very well. Like the coat of arms on the main plate is breathtakingly beautiful, and I don't think I've seen a title this pretty really since the old Winged Eagle stuff that they used to do for the world title. Like, those were beautiful belts too, and yeah, like the intangibles around this thing, I thought were just absolutely top notch. Especially the backstage stuff that you get night one, and if you follow the tournament on any social media aspect, Twitter or Facebook, they have a bunch of videos going up throughout the whole weekend of stuff going on, and it just felt like the tournament was alive with everything they did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, with it felt like this big thing that was happening in the afternoon. Of course, for us to live here in America, football kind of takes over at that point. So it's sometimes difficult to pay attention to two things at once. But let's get into it here. I mean, you had a lot of, like I said, there was guys that even the crowd didn't know because they didn't get much of a reaction to them. But the ones they did know, they certainly let you know that they knew who they were. And that was the fun part of this. So just to kind of go over the people in case you don't know anyone and you're just kind of listening to this, or you haven't watched it and you're listening to this or whatever. So you have Sam Gradwell, I think he was the guy that's actually from Blackpool. That's where they were where the Empress Ballroom is. Saxon Huxley, Joseph Connors, James Drake, Jordan Devlin. I kept getting confused with Judas Devlin, is what I was confused with on the previous podcast. Danny Burch, who of course was in NXT previously. Pete Dunne, who almost got into the Cruiserweight Classic. Roy Johnson, Trent Seven, H.C. Dyer, Wolfgang, Tyson T-Bone, Mark Andrews, Dan Maloney, and am I missing something from Tyler Bate and Tucker? I think that's it for everybody. So, out of those first round matches, what stood out to you? What do you remember? What did you like, not like? Maybe who didn't? Who do you think didn't do much for you? Paul.
Go ahead, Gary. Oh, okay.
Hey, go ahead, Paul.
I like I said, I was probably a lot more familiar with most of these guys than both of y'all were, just because I've sort of tuned into the UK promotions that have been going up and popping off in the last couple of years. But I mean, Mustache Mountain, of course, Tyler Bate and Trent Seven, both incredible talents. Danny Burch, Martin Stone, another great talent too. Tucker really came out of nowhere. I wasn't overly familiar with him, but him and Bate wrestled an amazing main event in that first round. Wolfgang, of course, I was familiar with from my ICW experience, and that dude continues to impress me at being 240, 250 pounds, and as agile as he is incredible. Mark Andrews, I think, really got to show off everything he could do. And if you watch this tournament, you're going to want to see him on 205 Live like tomorrow.
That's all I thought about was, man, if there's a guy that's really showing you that what 205 Live could be, that's Mark Andrews right here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, Pete Dunne, probably the MVP of this entire tournament. Joseph Connors looked great too. And he has such a distinct look too, especially with every chance the cameras really got to show half of his ear missing. They definitely clued in on that. I mean, I think the only real guy who was sort of a miss here might have been Saxon Huxley, who just didn't really get to stick out a lot. And it might just be because Sam Gradwell isn't all that great in that first match either. Because I would say that was really the only real miss there for me.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, when Saxon Huxley's getting Jesus chants instead of a chance for his name, two different Jesus chants, by the way, at the guy. I mean, he kind of does look like him, but
they were chanting like, "Jesus, won't you be my God?" Didn't they say that?
Yeah,
exactly.
I love that.
Oh my God.
Oh God,
Wow.
that was amazing. That's so fun. We didn't. I don't know if you guys mentioned. I'm trying to think, but this crowd was awesome. Would you expect any less from this crowd? No, you wouldn't.
I mean, there was times where they
great,
weren't like into everything, but for the most part, they were into it. And when they needed to be, and the thing is, they were into the matches too. They weren't just being dumb to be dumb, or like I felt like sometimes during the NXT show they were just chanting things to chant stuff. Like here, I didn't feel that. I mean, other than the Jesus thing and a couple of other times, I felt like they were really just clued into the matches and they were chanting for the guys because they knew them, and that's what made it fun. And I will say, I don't really care for Nigel on commentary and ROH, but on this show, he was really good. I really enjoyed him on this show for some reason, and Michael Cole didn't get on my nerves, so.
Yeah. That's a shock too.
Yeah, it's like when Michael Cole goes out of the country, he's good,
Yeah. When it's something that doesn't have to do with the regular brand, he's okay. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't familiar with these guys at all. Really had no background with anybody. Mark Andrews is the only guy, but that's because we cover TNA on this program. But I will say this: Tyler Bate at first I don't know. I mean, he was fine. I kind of looked at him as kind of a cheesy character, and I looked at a guy like Jordan Devlin as being, at first I honestly thought he was going to come in this, a babyface. People are going to love him. He's a nice guy, and you find out, oh no, he is not such a nice guy, and he's one of those cruel intention kind of characters, which I appreciated. Just he's coming in there to do anything to win, and I appreciated that to an extent. So that deal with Danny Burch kind of bummed me out because I thought that they had a pretty good match there. Danny Burch is one of those guys we've covered on NXT a lot of times, and I was a little bit surprised that he didn't get a further run. But when I saw him match up against Devlin, I kind of figured it would happen. But you know how we saw Rich Swann go far in the Cruiserweight Classic, I kind of thought Burch was going to get a little love here, but he didn't. And Wolfgang was very impressive to me. I thought he was a guy that I was really looking at that, man, this guy just has some great talent. I'm not sold on his finisher. I'm sorry. A guy like him, and he's good at it. Don't get me wrong. Nothing against that. I just think that his character could probably use a different finisher. That's just me. Trent Seven was good. I mean, I kind of believed in the hype after getting a chance to see him wrestle. T-Bone was a guy, though. I was kind of really disappointed he didn't go further. I really was. I really like T-Bone. But maybe we'll get a chance to see him pretty soon here. Any other guys that I really like? Connors, you guys already mentioned was great. I really appreciate what he did in this matchup, and I mean, it's has to go unsaid. Pete Dunne and did a great job. You got to feel bad for Roy Johnson because he was such a great talent too, but Dunne was going to go and move on, and the rest of this crew, Sam Gradwell, once again another impressive guy. I really loved him watching him face off against Huxley, but I think the first round actually was fairly good. I mean, you didn't have any matches here that you felt like it was done before it started. Honestly, every match you kind of got the impression that any of these guys could have won.
Mm-hmm. I just to touch on some of the matches, like the finish for Devlin and Burch did so much for Devlin because they were everybody that I've talked to and everybody in that crowd seemed to be way more into Danny Burch. But by the end of that, with the way the finish went, even though that looked nothing like what the planned finish was, the kick busting Danny open on the back and then getting the fall that way through a ref flub, I think really helped get a bunch of heat on him going forward and even really helped out in that next the match they would have on the next night when he took on Tyler Bate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, that's what I love. You had to start with some of these matches with these guys just straight up coming out and doing anything they really wanted to, and they were going to punish you, and it was just right there in your face. I appreciate that character development. It goes back to what you were talking about earlier, Paul. They didn't care. They were going to develop these characters before it got too far into this tournament, which I loved.
Well, they had to because you had way less people on this show that you got to remember, like the people that are in the Cruiserweight Classic, the ones that we knew, there's a bigger chance that the broader U.S. audience probably knew who they were than, say, the ones that were here that people knew. So you're basically having to take almost 15 out of 16 guys, because we'll say that perhaps people might have seen Danny Burch here or there, but he never got to develop any character either. He was a job guy. So you're taking 16 guys from zero to we got to do something with some of these guys so that people remember who they are when this show is over. So that there's people to look forward to. And I think overall that's really, you made 2 stars in the show, definitely, with who wound up getting to the final. But I think you had definitely, when it was over, you said, oh wow, I want to watch this guy again. I want to watch that guy again. And you had that in the Cruiserweight Classic, but I don't know that it was that many. I don't know that it changed, like, okay, well, I've seen not a million, but I've seen a bunch of Kota Ibushi matches. You basically confirmed to me that he is great. Thank you. I already knew that, but he's great. Okay. Like Cedric Alexander, we already knew he was great. So many guys we already knew about, but like these guys, you're getting to learn them from the first time and go, man, now I want to go watch Progress. I want to go watch ICW or whatever, wherever they're from. I want to go watch more of them. So what those casual fans probably experienced with the Cruiserweight Classic, if they really got into it, I think we got to experience that as hardcore fans, and that's really cool. We don't get that all the time. So
I think they were willing to take chances on these guys as far as character development goes, because they had all signed contracts, and that wasn't the case in the CWC. You didn't know who was getting signed and picked up here and there,
right,
until either halfway through or whatever. So I think that had a huge effect on how they booked this thing out.
Do you think they learned their lesson when it came to the Cruiserweight Classic, where they didn't have all those guys inked up, and had guys like Kota Ibushi who wouldn't sign?
I'd say no, because they've still been able to use Ibushi. So to have some of that open, like, I think you got totally screwed by Zack Sabre Jr., but I think anybody else, they have been able to call them and they've shown up, and they've been able to come back and sign some of these guys or whatever when they go and they go, okay, I've had my time, let me go take this off from WWE and whatever. I mean, so I think overall the UK thing is just, they had to make sure they signed these people because they didn't want the world of sport to come and watch them on this program and go, oh, well, let me go get this guy. Let me go get this guy. He's not signed. They wanted to make sure before they did this tournament, because they have competition in this way, nobody can come and get these guys if we don't want them to. They can go work those shows other than World of Sport, obviously, but if we call them, they have to show up.
That might be the case. I mean, we talked about that before, about how this was a way to steal talent away from the World of Sport revival and maybe even What Culture too. But I think they wanted, if they were planning on it and still planning on doing that network show about these guys, I don't think they would have used anybody that they didn't have signed. So if they didn't want to sign, then they were out. And then, obviously you have this. Apparently they approached Zack Sabre Jr. to be in this again, and he said no because, one, the money is low, and two, he's already got a lot of exposure in both the UK and here in the US, which a lot of these other guys don't have. They have exposure there in the UK, obviously. They don't have any of that here, and that's why a lot of these guys are doing it.
Right. And a lot of people said that in their little promo video, that it was, such a big deal to be able to do this. And, and I really felt like Nigel was really just happy to be there too. Because he wanted to be there as a wrestler at one point. So I think it all kind of came together to work here. I mean, I agree with you. The Danny versus Jordan Devlin match stood out to me from that finish, obviously, but just obviously, Jordan Devlin looks like he was trained by Balor. He's basically kind of models himself almost like Balor Jr. With the jacket and everything. And and then you get Pete Dunne, who was awesome. Not necessarily in that first match. He was much better as the show went on. He was good in that match against Roy Johnson, but Trent Seven I thought looked really good in that match with Dyer. And some of these matches was really more of a showcase for the person with the bigger name. So, you didn't get a whole lot with them, but like you said earlier, the Tyler Bate and Tucker match was tremendous. One of the best matches of the tournament, I think. Just they let them go out there and have that freaking intensity that you get in those main events, and going the back and forth, and yeah. I mean, you kind of knew Bate was going to win, but this was still a really good match.
Yeah, and Tucker, I think it might be somebody I'd love to see on 205 Live. He's got a lot. He reminds me a lot of actually Tony Nese. Actually, he's got the build, and he can do all the big flips and everything, and he looks impactful in everything he does, which I really enjoyed a lot. I don't want to sell Roy Johnson short in that match with Pete. He's only been wrestling for 2 or 3 years. He's a product of the Projo. He's still getting his legs under him, I thought Joseph Connors looked great in that match with James Drake, too. I don't want to take away from those guys, because I thought they wrestled probably the most even match out of everything we got to see on that first round. And they both, I think, did a good job in that.
I don't know. I thought Connors dominated him for a while. and then because he started doing that thing where, oh, you're gonna attack my ear, so I'm gonna attack your ear, and just I thought for like a couple of minutes straight, he was just beating the tar out of Drake. But yeah, Drake did kind of come back for a little bit. Just out. Go ahead. Sorry.
It was nothing like Mark Andrews. Yeah, that Mark Andrews versus Dan Maloney was completely a Mark Andrews showcase.
Oh yeah,
which is great. But that's more of what I was comparing it to. That or you look at the Trent Seven HC Dyer match too, where that was very much a Trent Seven showcase.
Oh yeah, and I did like the way that they worked that with Mark Andrews kind of doing the whole both several of his matches on this show were the whole little guy against the big guy, and he worked out so well, and being able to put in the flips in there with the certain moves that he had to do and everything. Just I thought he had a total coming out party in this. Like if they don't. I think it's a real crime if they don't say, okay. I mean, obviously it's different because they'd have to either fly him out, or I don't know if he already lives in the U.S. because he was working for TNA, or
he moved here.
Oh, he moved here? Okay.
Yeah.
So hopefully that means he is going to be on 205 because it'd be great to see him on like Raw and everything, just because he stands out a lot. Mm-hmm. But Wolf, man, I gotta say, Wolf, like you said, Wolfgang, being that big and being able to, do the pretty moonsault and then go out there and like fly and all that is just and he's also intense too. He's not just sitting there, just okay, let me be this small guy or let me be this big guy that does flying moves. Like he does the big guy stuff too, which. To me, makes him stand out more than just I want to be Peter Costa and just fly everywhere. So, I guess let's move on to the night 2, which this is kind of where you start getting the who's going to make a difference in this kind of deal. We get the Mark Andrews defeating Joseph Connors. You get Tyler Bate beating Jordan Devlin. You get Pete Dunne beating Sam Gravell in one of the best story matches of the show, because Sam Gravell has a messed up back, and Dunne just basically does everything he can to obliterate his back. Is tremendous. And you get Wolfgang and Trent Seven as well. So, what you guys think here?
Go ahead, Gary.
I really enjoyed this. I mean, once again, it goes back to the fact that when you watch that matchup and, you're really enjoying it and just sitting there thinking, okay, well, who's really going to go through and who's going to win? I really thought this was Devlin. I really, really did. I thought this was his opportunity. Like I said, I didn't think Brait was going to be that guy, but it goes along with the storyline. And Brait's a lot better than you give him credit for if you're just a new, watcher of him. I think he really has a lot to impress you with. He definitely showcased a lot of skill. Devlin's just that hard-nosed guy. That guy that he has got a lot, we already talked about it. You guys did mention it. You can definitely tell who he was trained by. You can kind of see some of those Ballerisms inside him and the way he presents himself. So I really appreciated his ability, but the way this all worked out, I'm completely happy with Brait going through, him beating Devlin, of course, once again, a little surprised, but I was okay with it.
I think the way that they established Pete Dunne early, right, in the match with Roy Johnson, he's working a lot of the classic joint locks that you get in British wrestling, really showing off what he can do, and then he attacks Sam Gradwell at the end of night 1 and really works him over. And gets yelled at by Regal, who is universally loved in England. I don't think there's anybody over there who hates him at all. And every time he came out, he got loud cheers. So him getting in Dunne's face and all that was really added a lot, and I think put Pete Dunne over solidly as a heel. And then if that didn't, then what he did to Sam Gradwell, who played such a great sympathetic babyface, I think in that match was really top notch. And I love that Dunne didn't even use his finisher, right? It's the big slam in the corner. really working that back some more, as Sean had already mentioned. That really got him, got him the victory. Mark Andrews and Joseph Connors, I thought was great too. Andrews once again gets to show off everything. Connors gets his fair share. I thought, my favorite match in the second round was Trent Seven and Wolfgang, though. Back and forth, hard hitting. I think they really showed. There's a lot of talk of British strong style, especially in Progress. I think that was the definition of it. Seven doing the Rainmaker as his finisher, obviously, is something that will automatically draw you to Okada-isms. But Wolfgang getting the upset in there, too, because I think a lot of people, including myself, had Seven winning this thing, and they go with Wolfgang, which not a bad choice either. But I loved that match out of the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That was a great one. And like I said, Wolfgang's so impressive. I mean, he's a guy that I said, this is a star immediately just by watching him and seeing everything he could do. I really appreciated everything that he brought to the table. And once again, I mean, that kind of just a strong, invasive kind of guy that he is. I mean, I really thought, man, this guy could possibly be in the finals. But, he's one of those, ones that really impressed me, and I appreciated that match to, its full extent. And, going to the other ones, we were talking about, like Pete Dunne and the way that Sam Cradwell did in that match against Dunne. I mean, that wasn't a match I was excited about because both those guys, I mean, they're so physical, and I was overly impressed with him, and I was kind of bummed. I mean, I like Pete Dunne and him both, but I mean, Cradwell was just so impressive. I wanted him to go further too.
Yeah, I thought he did much better in that second match with Dunne, but once you saw what they were doing with Dunne here, where they were putting some story into it, it was gonna be really hard for them not to progress with him. I agree with the Seven and Wolfgang match. That was the best one of that second round for me. Just really loved it, them just going back and forth, and I was like, damn, this thing is really finally like getting into that next gear. Just really enjoyed that, and I thought they'd do the whole let's have the two tag team partners face off for all the marbles kind of thing in that semifinal, and they had Wolfgang win, so that was surprising. And yeah, so I mean, and again, Mark Andrews was great in that. That's like, I'm gonna say that every time he wrestles, but geez, he was great in this. And then you have the semifinal, or the two semifinals, which is Tyler Bate and Wolfgang against Pete Dunne and Mark Andrews. And basically, Pete Dunne is pissed. He wants to whoop up on some Mark Andrews. This match was absolutely freaking awesome. Dunne just freaking Germans him into the turnbuckle, which was nasty. And then he hits that bitter end, and he wins. Just, man, if they did anything, was Pete Dunne just totally looks like this nasty heel that you don't want to like, but he's so awesome, it's like hard not to like him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is perfect for all those reasons, and especially with this whole storyline of Dunne and the way he's been treating his opponents. I mean, he even talks about it. He said Triple H was proud of him, because he was making his own name, that kind of stuff. Even though he was doing all these dastardly deeds and all that. And I appreciated it. And this was a great matchup for the crowd too, because Mark Andrews, I think a lot of people in that crowd just loved him to death. And so getting a chance to see him face this guy that they just wanted to see possibly, go down. It didn't happen their way, but at the very end, you really, that was the final moment. You knew Andrews wasn't coming out of it, because before that, he came out of everything. It seemed like he could hit his finisher out of anything, and he just couldn't get it done this time.
This semifinal is absolutely wonderful, and there's so much going on here that if you're into the UK scene, that's happening, especially in the Pete Dunne Mark Andrews match. But Progress, for example, they had a show on Sunday. Pete Dunne's their champion. He's over here on this show, so they work a card around to a bunch of these other guys. And Pete Dunne and Mark Andrews, they trained together. They came up together. They run Attack Pro Wrestling in Cardiff, Wales together. There's so much history between them, and they have this absolutely incredible match. 4.25 for me. This was my favorite match of the tournament. Pete Dunne looks incredible. Andrews looks incredible. You really pull for Andrews, and then Dunne just manages to pull it out at the end after that maybe the best-looking finisher he hits the entire weekend. And I can't speak highly enough about that match. Tyler Bate and Wolfgang was good, too. They work a nice big man, little man matchup where Bate ends up injuring his shoulder at the end after Pete Dunne attacks him and runs him into the ring post, and that sort of sends you into the final with some questions about Bate and working an underdog thing. But him even lifting Wolfgang for the Tyler driver, or the Tiger driver, was just great too. I enjoyed the psychology in that match, but I think the entire tournament had anything on Andrews and Pete Dunne.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. They also set that up with the whole Wolfgang was hurt thing too with the Tyler Bate match, because he winds up like breaking his nose, and which it started because he kind of busted it open the previous match, so he had a lot of things going against him, and even then it took a lot for Bate to beat him, which was a great part of that. And then you set up your final, which is Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. I love the whole stuff with Pete Dunne before then, where William Regal just absolutely he'd already done this to Sam Gravell, right? So he goes and attacks Tyler Bate, and then they do this thing before we get to that match of basically sort of wasting time with Finn Balor coming out and get to talk about the tournament and everything. And you also get a special extra match with Neville and Tommy End going at it, and damn, that was good too.
That promo that Neville cut before that match, just great. Absolute greatness. Puts himself over, obviously, ahead of all the guys in the tournament, saying that if he was in it, there wouldn't have been much of a competition because he would have won, because he, of course, is king of the cruiserweights and all this great stuff. And Tommy End, who worked Progress earlier that day for their show, answering the open challenge from Jimmy Havoc, and then turning around and coming here to wrestle Neville. Like, that guy is getting shopped around everywhere, and that's so cool. But these guys have a great match too. It's obviously nothing, I think, close to what they're capable of putting on together, but I think you get a good picture of Tommy End, all the strikes. Neville gets the victory, looking strong, going towards that cruiserweight title match he's got at the Rumble. But what a nice surprise this was.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I really enjoyed that. I thought, wow, this is actually going down. I never expected that they would do this, and so it was exciting. I just thought, they put a lot into it. Once again, you can see that the people in the UK still love Neville to no end. And, at the end of the day, Tommy End gets a chance to shine, because right now, he's pretty fresh and pretty new still when it comes to being in NXT and all that. So it was just a great match. And, I'm glad they brought it into this whole tournament just to kind of add a little bonus for everyone.
Yeah, I was a nice surprise to have Neville be there, and that's another thing, like where you go, oh man, Neville's not here, and he wasn't in the Cruiserweight Classic, and he brings all that up in the promo, which is tremendous, and the crowd was really going with him there, until Tommy End came out, and then we got some dueling chants and all that kind of stuff. So then the match was good, and it was kind of like that nice buffer before you get to the main event. And you get to the main event, and to me, I really love this match. I loved it just a little bit more than the semifinal. Just because you told a wonderful story with Tyler Bate here, and he has the kinesio tape on the arm, and he's trying so hard not to use it for things. There's times where he does, and I mean, it's going to happen. It's hard to just have perfect limb work throughout an entire thing. You got to remember the guy's 19 years old, but just tremendous stuff. I loved all the whether he does the airplane spin a ton of times just to make sure he can get Dunn dizzy, and Dunn coming back and like blasting him, hitting the big finisher, and he still doesn't win, and just he finally gets the Tiger Driver and he wins, and you're like, oh man, this is just great stuff. And total surprise that Tyler Bate won. I thought Dunn would be the one that winds up winning, because you got Tyler Bate with the injury and everything. But I mean, to a young kid like that, that's really cool that WWE decided, okay, we're gonna give it to him, and you got 2 stars made at the end. Can't really complain.
I'd argue, I mean, you probably made 4 or 5 guys out of all this. I think Wolfgang and Mark Andrews, with their great showings, are probably pretty high up on people's radar if they're going to tune into the future UK show. Even Trent Seven, if you're into the scene, I think there's a possible feud where he gets jealous of Bate. You have him turn, and you have a feud ready to go there too. But Pete Dunne was excellent in this. MVP of the entire tournament for me. Pushed the pace, really controlled the match. Obviously, worked the veteran. He's been wrestling for 11 years, and the dude, I think, showed it off here. Bate looked great too. I thought, the plucky underdog. The fans loved him. They were all behind that wave thing that he does, and it is an incredible match. I rated it the same as I did the Mark Andrews Pete Dunne match, but man, what a match! What a great match!
Oh, for sure. I mean, I really loved it. This was a great way to conclude this tournament. And, at the end of the day, I mean, it's kind of funny to say, but, I look at Braid as he's a great talent. You saw everything that he had to offer. I do have some similarities between him and TJ Perkins, though, because I never really saw it coming with TJ Perkins during the Cruiserweight Classic. I just kind of felt like, okay, he's a no-name. People that, of course, in America that have watched TNA, they know who he is, so maybe he's going to get a lot of props because of that. We knew Brian Kendrick was getting a lot of the love because of, former WWE superstar. But in this, I kind of felt like he was getting that rub a little bit, but I never really thought he was going to get this far. Not that he didn't deserve it. I was a little surprised. I thought Dunn was going to have this in the bag, or I even thought Wolfgang was going to make it eventually in this tournament, and he did make it. So at the end of the day, my similarity, maybe, just in my personal view, I kind of see how that storyline went, very similar to the Cruiserweight Classic, the underdog one. But, Brait definitely deserves it. He did a good job.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, that'll be the end of the tournament there, but what do you guys, anything else you want to say before we kind of conclude this, or you want to rate the whole, what would you say rating the whole tournament, I guess in 2 days, what would you say, would you give it out of 10?
Man, I'd give the whole tournament an 8. It's great storytelling, I think, throughout. They really established everybody. You have stars ready to go for whenever you launch that UK show. And you have a lot of great wrestling in this, too. I don't think there's a match in here below 2.5. Maybe Huxley and Gradwell might have been 2 1/4. But everything else, semifinals on, you have 3s across the board, even, breaking the 4 barrier. Like I said, I love this tournament. I think I enjoyed it more than CWC just because the storytelling aspect, along with the great wrestling, really made it feel complete. The whole aura of the building added a whole bunch. I think if this is the model they use going forward, we talked on the last show about them using an Asian championship and a Latin American championship. It seems like this is sort of setting the groundwork for how they're going to move forward with that. WWE's pairing up with these promotions and actively promoting ICW and Progress on this show. Even showing off the owners, as Gary said during the first night. And I think if this is the model going forward, obviously it's going to really take away from independent wrestling, but I think that's who WWE's kind of at war with right now, is everybody against them. And they're looking to try to make sure that they come out ahead.
Yeah, definitely, and I get your point. They really are coming after those indies, and they're going to be doing it even more and more until they feel like that they've got the advantage in the long run, that they've got a future that doesn't have to depend on what happens in the indie circuit. But I love that. They gave us a quality group of guys here that really you may not have known about them if you didn't. You're not like Paul, and you really don't pay attention to those other promotions over there in the UK. They gave you a very well-rounded view of each of them. They gave you a roster here that I feel like day one, all six, all these guys can fit in that roster and have points and not just be a bunch of no names running around. Now I kind of feel like I would love to watch this show, and I'd be completely happy with any matchup that they put in front of me. So that's quality, that's good, and definitely a good start to the UK.
How did we miss mentioning that, like, Tyler Bate, the whole reason he got into wrestling is because he thought Kane's entrance was cool. I mean, that like by itself was, when I watched, Raw at 12, I thought Kane's entrance was cool too. So, I could totally understand how that gets you into it.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty cool. I mean, I think that the theatrics and everything sometimes really gets kids excited about it, and I can understand why that would be a point of revelation for him to why he wants to start wrestling. But still, it is kind of hilarious thinking about it. So,
yep.
Yeah.
So that'll do it for our review of the WWE United Kingdom Tournament. Tyler Bate is now your United Kingdom champion, the winner of the United Kingdom Championship, and we'll have to see. They said it in their little promo that their idea was to make a WWE UK show that would be filmed there in the UK, but we've heard nothing of the sort. I mean, perhaps they were trying. I mean, at one point, supposedly they were trying to get 205 Live on TV, and that didn't work. So perhaps they are seeing if they can get it on some kind of TV station there, and that could be the holdup, or there could be other logistics. This costing money, and you got to figure out how you're going to have a crew. Is this going to be filmed once a month? Whatever. But just hope we do get to see it, because it'd be nice to be able to see more of them.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, I don't know how that UK show is going to work going forward, but I would think they would do it like NXT, Rex. These guys, they're going to have to work everywhere to keep making that income. And if they're pairing up with these other promotions, obviously you can't take away dates from them. And, so you got to be sort of careful, I think, with how you do it. But I think they tape once a month, and then you just have weekly shows. And maybe you lead up to something like TakeOver that NXT has.
Can you imagine if now they have, like, takeovers everywhere? Just, God, this is going to be, this could quite frankly be such an amazing year for wrestling. If you have NXT TakeOver, the WWE UK thing, and all, if they really do the Latin America and Asia, like, just, my goodness, the network could just be this thing you really could watch all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's what they want.
That is what they want.
It is what they want. They want you to be clued in constantly. So hopefully you enjoyed our take on the WWE UK Tournament. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You can let us know. Either if you're going at the site, you can leave a comment at the inside the post there to let us know how you liked it. You can go in the Facebook group and say, hey, I watched the tournament. This is what I thought. Surprisingly, we didn't have a ton of people that were talking a whole lot about it in our group, but I did see a ton of people watching it live on Twitter and everything. So this seemed to be something that a lot of people were enjoying, and hopefully they take that and do something positive with it. But we shall see. So until we see you again, later, everybody.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.